Hello, everyone. I wanted to do an overview of this course, Engineering Ethics, give you a sense of what we will be reading, why we will be reading what we will be reading, and just my general approach to teaching engineering ethics. I have been teaching engineering ethics probably for 20 years. And I assure you, when I first started teaching it, I did a very bad job. And that's because I had no idea how to teach it. And it wasn't until I had tried and probably failed, really, to teach it several times before I hit on a way of teaching it that I think is legitimate and that I'm interested in and that I can stand behind. And the key for me is that engineering ethics is a species of professional ethics. And that's really where my approach starts. Now, that is to presuppose that engineering is a profession, and that is not entirely clear. But that's part of the course, too, is examining whether engineering is or should be, even should be, a profession. So you can think of this course as a course in professional ethics, but of course having to do with engineers, not having to do with other professions like doctors and lawyers, except insofar as there are commonalities for all professions and all professional ethics. To that end, you'll see that one of the touchstones of our course will be materials that relate to the NSPE, that is the National Society for Professional Engineers. And here is their website, National Society of Professional Engineers, excuse me. And that's where I'm drawing the code of ethics from. That is the reading for week one. There are any number of engineering codes of ethics because there are different engineering societies. There's different societies for mechanical engineers and electrical engineers and civil engineers. But the NSPE is supposed to be an umbrella organization that is supposed to be relevant for all engineers, not just PEs, not just professional engineers, although that is really the heart of it. But the code of ethics, that's our first reading, is something that is supposed to apply to all practicing engineers, not just PEs, not just professional engineers. It is the code of ethics for engineers, not the code of ethics for professional engineers. So it's supposed to cover you whenever you start practicing. Maybe you already have started practicing. That's another question, whether you're practicing as an engineer in your co-ops or not, but that's something I am not competent to weigh in on. Okay, so it's a course in professional ethics for engineers, and so we will be drawing upon the code of ethics for engineers, and we will be drawing upon the BER cases. Take a look at the website, the ethics component of it. The Board of Ethical Review is a board composed of professional engineers who, purely for teaching purposes, issue decisions about the ethicality of what different engineers have done. Here are the latest cases from 2020. You might have to sign up to be able to read them, but it's easily enough done. It's right here. So these sort of cases, which are not actually real cases, they're semi-fictional. They're maybe based on real events, but they are not. They don't use the names of engineers, and they change the facts sometimes because these are purely for teaching purposes. And it's a really wonderful resource that I use extensively in my teaching of engineering ethics. If you look at the course outline, you'll see that the first part of the course, Engineering as a Profession, really looks at the issue of whether engineering is a profession, and if it is a profession, what does that mean for the practice of engineering? And there any number of people would say that not only is engineering not a profession, but it shouldn't be, because there are certain burdens that fall upon a professional ethically that don't fall upon a non-professional, and maybe engineers don't want those burdens. I don't know. So really the first part of the course is an exploration of professional ethics in general, and that's week 3, the readings by Sieghart and Downey on the very notion of professional ethics, and then questions from Michael Davis about whether engineering actually is a profession. And finally, the week 5 reading by Spinden, an argument about the failure of engineers to do what they really need to do to legitimize themselves as a profession, because they don't really have a licensing requirement. So the first part of the course is really wide-ranging issues having to do with engineering as a profession and professional ethics as it applies to engineers. After the midterm exam, after week 5, we will move on to part 2 of the course, which looks in particular at the first and fourth canons, the first and fourth major principles or general principles of the NSPE Code of Ethics. The first canon being the very famous and central hold paramount canon, that engineers shall hold paramount the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And the fourth canon, the canon that says that engineers must be faithful agents and trustees of their clients and employers. As we'll see, there's been a lot of talk about the tension between these two canons, whether you can actually do both, whether you can actually hold paramount to public safety and be a faithful agent or trustee of your client or employer. Very difficult questions having to do with the difference between a client and a boss, being an employee and being a sole practitioner. Very difficult questions. But in any case, we'll be exploring both the first and fourth canons in some depth and the supposed tension between them. Weeks 6 and 8 are really classic essays in engineering ethics having to do with the first canon and what it means to uphold the first canon and what the limits of the first canon are. We'll be looking at additional Board of Ethical Review cases on the first canon as well. And then we will move to a couple weeks of focusing on the fourth canon through focusing on BER cases, and finally read a work that was done as an honors project several years ago by a former student of mine who wrote an assessment of the fourth canon as a research project. It was excellent work, and I've been using it for years because it fills a gap, and he's done us all a great service. So that is a notion, I hope, of what this course is about. It is an exploration of the idea that engineering is a profession, and then asking the question about what the professional ethics of engineering actually is or should be. I've done another video, obviously, where I went through the practical aspects of the course. This is just meant to be an overview. If you have any questions about either aspect, the practical aspect of what kind of requirements there are, or if you would like some clarification on the larger thematic issues of approach that I've done in this video, please do not hesitate to email me at this address or to call me on my cell phone, and we can talk.